It's that time again. It's time for the next Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. I was thinking of the old Howdy Doody show, remember? It's Howdy Doody time. It's time for Randy's channel. It's time for Randyland. La la la. That's Tra-La Boomsie or something. I don't know. They use these old pub songs from Great Britain. They were old standards, and they changed the words in their standard public domain, and that's how they get away with that stuff, and they don't have to pay any royalties and all fees and all stuff like that. So it's Tra-La Boomsie. It's Tra-La. We're over here doing another episode, and somebody was asking me just this weekend, what was that thing called that they played on the PIER years ago, and it had a piano player? And I said, you're talking about the shooting gallery where you shot and there was a piano player? Yes, that's it. Yeah. That was the Bonanza Shooting Gallery. Well, most people didn't know the actual name. It was just that shooting gallery, that electronic shooting gallery. They were a big deal. They came out in the early 70s. Well, before that, they had the real shooting galleries where you shot 22s, and they had special rounds. You would knock the targets over. Then somebody got the idea, come out with an electronic version with whimsical gadgets. There was really no way you could get hurt on this thing because it wasn't really shooting bullets. It was shooting a strobe light, which activated light sensors to activate the targets that did different things and different sounds. It was a lot of fun. Big hit, Bonanza Shooting Gallery. And they appeared all across the country. The first one I ever played was in Seaside Heights at the Casino Arcade. And it was 1971, 72 in that area. And it was a quarter. But a quarter back then, the kids working, and adults too, minimum wage was $1 an hour they got. So you were spending a quarter. Today, the kids want $20 an hour to work on the boardwalk. So that's 20 times. So that quarter that you put in that shooting gallery, it's like putting in $5 today because it's 20 times the value. Somehow or another, people had money to spend back then, and everybody loved playing the Bonanza Shooting Gallery. And money, you know how much that thing cost? Bonanza Shooting Gallery, back in the day when they were making them in the early 70s, they cost over $100,000. Wow! Use your math. Use your math. That was like $2 million today, if it's 20 times. So that was a huge amount of money, but they did great. Everywhere they went, they made a fortune, and they appeared across the country in amusement parks. So the man who was asking me about the one that he played down here in Wildwood, and he played it on Hunt's Pier, which was the iconic pier in Wildwood. Everybody went to Hunt's Pier. It was like the Disneyland of the East Coast. They had the Jungle Ride. They had the Golden Nugget, which was the Lost Mine Ride. They had the Pirate Ride, the pirate ship. They had all the things just like a Disneyland would have. Well, they had a Bonanza Shooting Gallery. And yes, I acquired it. I had to get the whole gallery. It's a 24-gun gallery, so there's many stations where the guns would be lined up. They usually have 4 guns, sometimes 5, because these were custom built for their location, because each location was going to be different. Some galleries were smaller. Some galleries had 10 guns. Most did not have 24. Most had 16 guns, 12 guns, 20 was big. This was a 24, was a big station. So there's at least 6 counters that had the gun stations. They were all around the area where they had their targets. And even the targets were not always the same, because if they didn't have as much room, they didn't have as many different targets. But certain targets were signature to the Bonanza Gallery. And those are the ones that everybody remembers, because every Bonanza Gallery had one. And one of those targets that was the really best is the piano player. And I got him up in the air here. And he's kind of sitting on top of a bench that I have elevated from the ceiling, suspended, should I say, from the ceiling. And he is playing a piano. Now, what happens when you shoot him? He sits up at his waist, and his head rises and the arms lift and they start going back and forth and playing the piano. Is he really playing the piano? No, he is not really playing the piano. Everybody would think that he's really playing the piano, but he's not. He's just acting like he's playing the piano. And the tape would play, and it was an 8-track tape, would play the sound of the piano being played, and everybody just was thrilled to that. And some models actually had keys on the piano that would actuate to make it look like he was hitting keys. In most instances, if they had that feature, which was not on all of them, they didn't work. So it wasn't a big deal. People really didn't notice it. But when that thing worked, it really worked well, and it was very, very realistic. Now, if you notice the face of the piano player, he's very distinctive. You see that face? Do you think you've seen him before? No, it's not Randy. No, it's not Randy's dad. Who could it be? It's Mr. Top Gun. He's got the same face as Mr. Top Gun, who was made by the same company years and years ago. Now, there are other targets around here as we walk our way around the maze of stuff. Uh-oh, I see something sticking up in the air. What could it be? It's a tail. Well, why is there a tail here? How do I know that's a tail? Well, because I know my stuff. Ugh. This is a pig in a barrel. Look at that. Ah! Here he is. He's the pig. Oink, 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 oink. And the pig in the barrel, you would shoot his target. Is his target there? No, his target's not there. Well, targets are easily, put on. His head would go up and down. And while he was doing that, he'd be wiggling his tail at the same time. And this was one of your automatic targets that would be on the shooting gallery. Isn't he cute? Oink, oink, oink. Now, this is one of their, look, it even has their insignia on it. Porky in the Barrel, the Bonanza Shooting Gallery. You see that? And he was 115 volts. No low voltage there, kids. All right, well, this would connect. Put it back here. This would connect to probably the target. Yeah, it's cut off. So this would be the target sensor, and he would be mounted in the front there. He would have a little bullseye and his sensor there that would tell this unit here that he got hit. And this piece, again, they used regular phono connectors. Look at that, RCA phono connectors. Look at that. That's a mini, and this is an RCA. Well, these would connect to the different units to tell the machine that it got hit and to play the tape unit and all that stuff. And the different plugins here would have to do with sound units and also activations. And he had regular 110 volt plug-in, and he would activate. So he used real 110 volt line current for his motors inside the pig. These things were kind of handmade. They didn't make so many of them that they could make them in China, that they were going to have them in every household throughout the world. They made them custom for parks. So they made these boxes and they connected them onto the different units or whatever. So the rest of the Bonanza Gallery is in here. I'm trying to think of the best way to do it. Probably this way is the best way to get to it. Further down inside Randyland, away from the things that we were just showing you with the piano player, we have the Bonanza Gallery counters. Now these counters, they look like they're real wood, but they're not. That is fiberglass paneling that is on there. And the counters are also fiberglass. You can actually see they use the fiber material in there. They used a clear coating on it. You see these cracks? They all had them. It was like a natural thing that happened with them. And I'm sure they didn't plan it that way, but the fiberglass would crack. And you would put your coin in, you would get a green light. Interestingly enough, the Bonanza Gallery, they were very ingenious. They used a very high pressure air. Gosh, it was probably, I don't remember exactly. I don't want to say things that's wrong because he doesn't remember. It might have been 300, 400, 500 pounds per square inch. They used a very high pressure special compressor just for the gun. What do you mean, just for the gun? Well, in this cable was not only the wires for the switch to activate the electronics of it, but there was a very fine hose going up in here, and inside this gun, when you pulled the trigger, that high pressure air would hit inside an apparatus that would sound like pop, 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 to give it the sound of a gun. And that actually was the biggest problematic part of the Bonanza Gallery, because that high pressure popper would fail. It would get popped so many times and it would wear itself out. When you ran out of, bullets, this is the sound you got, just the snap, snap. But the high pressure when you were hitting it was really cool. And they used, you can't even see in there, there was a strobe light in there. Inside the barrel was an actual strobe, like you would have a strobe light. Well, strobe bulbs do not have filaments, so the filament can't break. And that's really good. But they're glass, and they have gas in it. So if you smack that gun down really hard, you can crack the glass, and the gas is out, and then it doesn't work anymore, and you gotta get the mechanic there to take it apart and put a new strobe bulb in there. But it was really neat, and they were not digitally coded. Well, what does that mean? More modern galleries, you don't even see the flash. It's infrared. So I think that's really lacking. When you saw the flash, you knew where you were shooting because you could see the flash over at the target where you're shooting. You'd actually see the little light flash on the target, a little flash. So you knew where you were shooting. The infrared, it's pretty much blind to the naked eye. Well, when you have a strobe tube just blinks, all right? So the sensors only knew that they got hit by light, and they would activate the target. It didn't matter which gun hit them, and it didn't matter because you weren't keeping score, and they were just having fun hitting the targets, and everybody loved it. The more modern galleries, they have a score pad that actually registers score when you hit the target, and some of them even go as far as giving you tickets in arcades or whatever because you hit the target, and that can be done a few different ways. I know a few tricks around that to even do that with strobe guns. Be that as it may, the strobe tube guns were susceptible to flash cameras. Now remember, nobody had cell phones in their pocket, which would have been really awful today, and you really don't even need a flash on your cell phone today. But if somebody pulled out a camera with flash bulbs at the Bonanza Shooting Gallery, chaos. Because you took a picture, flash, all the sensors would get hit at the same time because they all saw a flash of light, which is what they're looking for from the guns. So every sensor, every target would go crazy, and it would typically pop the breakers because they were all activating at the same time. The whole gallery was down. People would lose their game because somebody came along with a camera. So they would have signs that would say, "No flash cameras" by this Bonanza Shooting Gallery. Of course, nobody cares what the sign says, and they would do it anyway. So the attendant would have to be on guard to see if somebody's going to pull out a camera. No, you can't do that. And they were usually too late, and they would do it anyway. And some people would do it for spite. Some people would have fun going over knowing that the result was going to be damage to the gallery, which is really, you're damaging the gallery by surging that. So the Bonanza Gallery had that Achilles heel. I still prefer it because I love that flash. And you can't code a flash like that because it's just one flash and light. I mean, I guess you could do it with LEDs on your phone, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. I mean, I love the old stuff, the old technologies, the way they did it. But the Bonanza Gallery was the Cadillac. And they came out with other knockoff galleries over the years. Now, these are targets here from the Bonanza Gallery. And I have them all confined together because of space. But there's a big rock wall back there. You see that? That was a waterfall. The water was constantly going with a pump down. There was a big pond on the bottom with some lily pads and frogs. Here's a frog sitting there on a rock, And these things were all wonderful. And these logs that you see up there would be on the floor in front of the pond. You see the cans there? You would hit the target in front of the can, and the can would shoot up in the air. You see the metal rod? Well, the can was guided on the rod. The rod went right through the can, so it would fly up and fly back down again. There were a lot of cans. This can here is actually on a curved rod. You see the curve? You can see over there where it's curving down. So you would shoot that, the can would fly over the rod to the other side. You'd shoot it on that side, it would fly over the rod on this side. So there were different things. You had the woodpecker up here in the tree. You had the little monkey over there. The Goonie bird. Oh, everybody loved the Goonie bird. You see him up there? He's sitting on the handle of a water pump. So you'd shoot the Goonie bird, and the water pump would go up and down, and his wings would flap, and the water would come out of the pump going into the trough, and he would go, ah, 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 as a Goonie bird would go. I do a good Goonie bird, don't I? Here you have a traffic light, all right? And you would shoot that target, and the light would turn red. There'd be another target under there. The light would turn yellow, another target under there. The light would turn green. So, you know, all the odd things. There's another kind of a bird up there. See him hiding up there? Another bird. The Randy heads are just something I added because I was going to add the Randy theme in order to go along with the Bonanza Shooting Gallery. But, you know, all these fun targets would be spread all around. And if I were to set this gallery up today, I would need the entire area where I have Fascination set up now. The entire area. So I can't set up a Bonanza Shooting Gallery unless I have an amusement park or an amusement pier or a giant super Walmart, New Jersey State Amusements Museum, all these things. So I would love to set them up. There were flowers. You see the flowers there? The flowers would turn around. There'd be a motor under the rock. You see the hole? So the flowers would kind of rise up and they would turn around and spin and go back down again. There was I know he's around here. I don't see him. I see antlers, but there's a skull from a steer with his antlers, and you know, you'd shoot him and a light would light up inside. He'd kind of rise up a little bit. I mean, all these fun things. This was a background, and you shot this, and the skulls would fall down. I mean, they used really good ingenuity. The skull would back up. Okay, I can't do it because it's pneumatic. He would rise up, back up, and shoot down. Back up, right? Then he would come back up again. So you could shoot 4 different skulls here. There was another one with bottles. And in the back somewhere, you had to have a huge compressor that not only fed the regular air, that was usually low pressure, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, going to the different targets for their pneumatics, but you had to have one that did the high pressure in order for the guns also. In later years, they came out with a kit where you could do away with the high pressure, and they had a sound, an electronic sound for the gun, and a speaker underneath each cabinet, and when you shot the gun, it went chew, chew, or something like that. And it was nice, it was okay, but it wasn't like the original pop, pop. It was really top quality. The Bonanza Gallery was the Cadillac of shooting galleries. They made some knockoff galleries over the years, and interestingly enough, the knockoff galleries were in various degrees of quality. The second best gallery was called Carson City, and it was made by a company called Amusement Electronics, and they were the competitor to the Bonanza Gallery, which was made by the Fascination Company, believe it or not. So when the Fascination Company, the owner had died and his wife was going to sell out, who were they going to sell out to? They sold out to their competitor shooting gallery company because they weren't making Fascinations for years anymore. They were making shooting galleries. So they sold out to the competitor. Now, in Seaside Heights, the Casino Arcade had the Bonanza Gallery. The Carousel Arcade on the south side had a Carson City. Carson City, they bought it from the Mad Hatter Arcade, which later became Coin Castle, which was right across the street from Lucky's Fascination, before I ever owned it. I was a player at that time. So my friend Mike Carbone, who had the Carousel Arcade, he had bought the Carson City from Randy Tunney at the Mad Hatter Arcade. He had it down in the Carousel Arcade. Well, the Carson City was nice. It had a lot of interesting targets, but it had a lot of problems. It wasn't a Bonanza Gallery, which was a Cadillac. So somewhere along the line, Mike got a hold of a used Bonanza Gallery, and he bought it, and we were going to change the Carson City into the Bonanza Gallery, but it became a hybrid because we kept the back walls of the Carson City, and some of the targets that were mounted to walls from Carson City remained. We added all the other stuff from the Bonanza Gallery, and they continued to call it Carson City. And then when Mike sold the arcade to Angelo Capetta, whose father, Lou Capetta, was one of the original owners of the Carousel Arcade back in the day when I was a kid. He ended up moving the Bonanza Gallery, the Carson City Gallery, over towards the front entrance on the north side of the arcade, and there it remained by the carousel for years until the end. And when I say the end came when that biblical fire took 3 square blocks of Seaside and Seaside Park, and it all burned down the year after Sandy. That was the end of the Carousel Arcade, which had been damaged in Sandy. It lost its back section, but the arcade was in the front with the gallery was in the front, so that survived until the fire when everything burned down. So it had a fiery death, the Carson City. But interestingly enough, hybrid that it was, all the targets that were not used in the Carson City when we turned it into a Bonanza version, I have, because I was working there at the time. So I have all the remaining targets from the Carson City, and I have a Bonanza gallery. So theoretically, when I put my Bonanza gallery together, I too could have a hybrid, putting in the extra targets I have from the Carson City, although I would not call it a Carson City. I would call it the Bonanza Gallery, because the Bonanza Gallery is the premier of the galleries. They just kept the name Carson City because the signs were already made for Carson City, and it kind of fit because it was a Western theme. But interesting stories. So the Carson City Bonanza Gallery hybrid from the Carousel Arcade in Seaside was destroyed in fire. The Hunts Gallery Bonanza I have from Hunts PIER. The Carson City, other half of it, I have. It's probably more than half. And I have all those in storage. And someday in the future plans, in the dreams of acquiring, the right location and setting everything up, it'll be together again someday, and I'll spend the rest of my years with 3 pairs of glasses on trying to see the small circuitry, restoring all this stuff, and back together again. So when I was at the Boardwalk Mall, I did have a small gallery there also, but it was neither a Carson City nor a Bonanza gallery. It was a little more modern. It was made by the company who bought out the Fascination Company, and it was a 5-gun, which I only used 3 guns of, and it was interesting. And that did keep score, and they used an interesting technology on that, which I can't show you, but it was rather clever, and it was something that I would have done myself, so hats off to you. And we'll end it there. We'll say thanks for joining us, and hope you had fun talking about the Bonanza Shooting Gallery and even a little bit of Carson City at the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Bye, guys.